Hello, Tribe. Welcome to the Paledora campus in our sixth co-creating regenerative community workshop. Today's topics are sustainable solutions. When we talk about sustainable solutions, especially when it comes to regenerative community living, we talk about food, water, energy, and waste management. For today's talk, we invited our water magician, Karuna from Water Now. And he's not only an expert on water, but on all sorts of sustainable solutions. He will give us more insight on it. Hi, Karuna. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you all for having me. Feels great to be here and be inspired by regenerative movement. And hello, everyone. My name is Karuna. I'm with my company, Water Now Sustainability Consulting. And that really be background on my experience and education is that I received degrees for environmental engineering and environmental science, as well as sustainable practices. And since then, I've been working with a multitude of organizations, as well as my own organization, Water Now, to implement these in different communities throughout the world, and particularly here over the past 2 to 3 years in Mexico. So I think this is an extremely important topic as the sustainability and regenerative movements have picked up increased importance over the recent uh, time period. And this is due to many strains of development, industrialization, etc., which has made us need to tune in even further to how we can accelerate the regenerative movement, how we can make immediate impact, and how we can start to put the network pieces together that we need to help communities, help the planet, help ourselves to really tackle some of these issues that are there. So the time is always now to do this, and so I'm really happy to be here and can share some about our services that Julia has mentioned and how we can start to weave the pieces together that are needed for communities to take the next big noticeable step into the regeneration culture. So I'm going to try to share screen here.
So, when we talk about water, especially in terms of community living, we talk about fresh water and wastewater. I would love for you to just quickly touch on solutions that we have today to bring fresh water into communities in an autark way, off grid, and also different solutions that we have for wastewater treatment in regards to natural systems like humidalt and also filtration systems. Thank you so much, Karuna.
Thank you, Julia, for that direction. And yes, I'm going to attempt to share the screen now to review templates of slides that I have playing. So hopefully this will work here. See, got it here. Share screen, StreamYard. Okay. Um, all right. Hopefully this is showing up on your side there as well. Um, so what we're going to talk about first is how water filtration units and how sustainability can really be used hand in hand. So here we have um, what is a water filtration system that we installed in a hotel here in Aldea Zama. And through this UV filter, it removes 99.99% of bacteria, parasites, and E. coli without using chemicals, which is really the key here. It has a high flow rate, and these are relatively easy to install. Um, this is another kind of basic water filtration system that's very sustainable because Just by installing one of these units, it can save about 2,500 plastic water bottles per year. And these also remove any extra chemicals, fluorides, chlorides, heavy metals, contamination from the water, as well as making it a softer water drinking experience. As a side note, almost all plastic water bottle companies do the same technology, although a lot of them use reverse osmosis filtration, which actually can deplete a lot of the minerals from the water. So one thing I wanted to touch on here, which is one of the biggest untapped resources that we have in water, is rainwater harvesting. And here in the Yucatan, the rainwater is quite high, actually. And it takes approximately, we'll go into this here. I got certified through ARCSA, which is American Rainwater Catchment Associations. And there we primarily did designs and implementations of rainwater systems. So rainwater catchment is very good for recharging the aquifers, because instead of drilling a lot of deep water holes and or having to do extra consumption of plastic water bottle usage, you can use the rain. And here in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, for example, it's a very good area to do rainwater catchment. One, because of, again, there's higher rain volume. And then two, also because there's not a lot of heavy industrialization right here that would cause acidity or other chemicals to be in the rain. So here we have some stats, and I did my best to convert this to centimeters. But 1 inch of rain, approximately 2.5 centimeters on a 1,000 square foot house, I think that's about a 100 square meter house, collects 1,000 gallons of water, about 2,400 liters, which is enough for a family of 3 for at least 1 week. So here you have a small rain, an average rain. It's been raining like that here the past days. And that would fill up, a 2,500 liter tank, which basically is enough to live on with water for drinking, for showering, for toilets, etc. for a week. So this is kind of some of the importance of how we can start to be sustainable for that. And these rainwater catchments can work on virtually every roof. The only roofs that they don't work on are the palapa roofs, which are the straw hut roofs or the palm tree roofs. But any other roof that's like shingles or the clay roofs or metal roof, any other kind of surface that can catch rain that doesn't go through, it would work on. Here we have some basic steps. It looks like my numbering might be off a little bit, but the 7 basic steps of rainwater harvesting design are that we would calculate the square meters for the harvesting. So we can say that's basically just from the size of the structure. And then from there, we can figure out the tank sizing and the placement. They're usually always placed, like as in this picture here, they're usually always placed on the corner of a house. So it could be the front corner, it can be the back corner if you don't want to see it. From there, with the roofing coefficient, we can calculate how much yield we're going to get. And then there we can go into the components of the actual system. For the components here, what we would get would be what the things that were needed to install here are a gutter or a guard screening, and this is basically to keep anything like insects and bugs and etc. out. And then we would use a rain leaf eater, and then we'd have a tank screening. It's like a second layer of screening into the water filtration into the rainwater. A water diverter. This is to siphon off extra water in case there's so the tank doesn't flood. And then we have the rainwater storage, which is the actual tank. And then we have the overflow system. It's basically a nozzle that can divert water. And then if needed, you can have a pump. And with the submersible pump, let's say a 1/4 horsepower submersible pump, you can put that pump into the tank, and it'll pump it to anywhere. You could pump it to your showers. You could pump it through your kitchen. And you could also put a filtration system if you really wanted it to be a high quality drinking water system. So let's see. For that, the next system would be the next step would be the usage, which could be gray water, and we'll get more into gray water recycling now. And from there, again, you can use this for anything you wanted to use the water for. Here's an example of uh, a submersible pump and a rainwater catchment tank. This is the 5,000 liter one. This was for quite a deep well, actually, and it was a 1 horsepower pump, and it pumps up to 33 gallons per minute, which is over 100 liters per minute. And with these, again, they have the filters, the screens, the gutters, filter system optional. You can also put a meter and pressure gauge optional if you really want to use this for like a drinking water system, for example. Something else I would like to touch on now that's really important and starting to be done more in Europe and some places in the States, to a lesser extent here in Central and South America, is gray water recycling. So, what is gray water recycling? Gray water recycling, gray water can be defined as any type of water.
Because it is literally.
The new question. De vuelta, repeat the question. Yes, you first avísame que vas a hablar para yo
Okay,
desmutear.
I'm good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much, Karuna. Before you touch on gray water recycling, I would like to summarize what you just said. As rainwater collection is really such an essential part of the sustainable usage of water because it is literally given to us for free in the cleanest and most delicious form. Next to rainwater collection, we also have the ability to use cenote water, for example, in the Yucatan, right? And use filtration systems that you just presented to us to clean it and make it usable for different usages, like drinking water even, but obviously for flushing toilets, bathing, etc. Are there other freshwater solutions that you can point out before we go to gray water recycling?
Thank you, Julia, for that interjection. And yes, really, what we do at first is test the source of the water. Every region is going to kind of have different local mini ecosystems, eco habitats, and different sources. As most of us know here now, that the Yucatan Peninsula actually has the largest underground river aquifer system in the world, which in essence means that all of the waters here are connected somewhere between 5 or 6 meters deep down to maybe 10, 12 meters is the first layer of the aquifer. So shallow wells, for example, will also touch into this aquifer source, which means that you'd be drilling down and into the aquifer. Let's say if it's 7 or 8 meters, about 20 feet, and then from there you can pump the water up. The most sustainable way to do that would be through a solar pump that doesn't have to use gasoline or a generator. So you would pump the water up, and then the most common way to do that would be to pump it into, again, a storage tank. And that could be either an above ground tank or an underground cistern, which could be made out of things like cocoa-crete, which is more sustainable than concrete, for example. So it could go into a cocoa-crete cistern. It could go to an above ground tank or something like this. And then from there, if you pump it up with gravity, then it can go down into a village system, into showering, into structure of any type. So, besides that, if we're living in different places, like for example, in places like Oaxaca or Chiapas or North, and there also are usually more above ground running water systems, such as rivers or lakes or something that can be tapped out of. But for here in Yucatan, we primarily have cenotes. The important part about using water from a cenote would be to make sure or to check if it's a rechargeable cenote. And the difference between that is that if it's rechargeable, it means that there's water that's always pretty much coming in from the aquifer into that cenote. If it's not, if it's a closed water system, like a closed loop system, which means that no fresh water is being introduced into it, then they tend to get depleted and or to grow more algae. It can tend to get towards more bacteria, etc. And there's ways to recharge that through installing small, pumps that could basically move the water because water always likes to flow. So Whenever it becomes stagnant is when it has the chances for higher amounts of algae and bacteria to come in. So rechargeable cenotes are pretty easy to modify also. A lot of times they just need to be touching into the running aquifer that we have, which also highlights on the importance of keeping these aquifers from being contaminated since they're all obviously connected to each other. So, as a summary, we have the rainwater catchment, and we have being able to get water from, besides the sky and Mother Nature. We have the cenotes or underground aquifers. We have the possibility to dig a new well into the aquifer or use an existing above ground system. A fourth way that we're working on, myself as well as other companies, is desalination plants, which in essence would use ocean water to be able to take the high salt content out and use it for drinking water. And there are more low cost solutions that are coming into the fold now that are becoming more regenerative options. Here in the Yucatan, we'd also would have to deal with the sargassum issue during the summer months, which probably wouldn't be desirable. But in essence, you can also use any other fresh water, even if it's salinity. It would just take an extra amount of energy to translate it into freshwater systems.
Wow, thank you so much, Karuna. Can you just touch in like one or two sentences on the saltwater solutions? This is really exciting. I would love to hear a little bit about it.
Sure. Yes. There's a couple of companies now that are we're working in conjunction with, and in essence, since the past 10 years or so, the technology has advanced quite a bit now that we're able to basically push the salt water through these purified membranes. And so it's similar to a reverse osmosis system, in that basically it uses pressure to separate the NaCl or the salt molecules in the water. But this is better because it doesn't actually strip out the minerals as well. The one of the issues for the technology now is that it does require a relatively high amount of energy input to be able to require the pressure to move the molecules through, the water molecules through. But the good news also is that the technology has improved so much that now we can get, I think it was 800 gallons per day, or around 2,500 liters per day, with just a small size system that would be about as big as a normal size TV or something. So yeah, they're really increasing it. And basically what you would do is get the salt water into a certain this unit, put it through with a pump, and then it would be able to continuously serve out the fresh water, and then it would discharge the super salty water. And right now, the best way we think to go about the energy requirements for this would be to set up rather large solar arrays, because the solar could also be fed back into the electric system, for example, or it can be used online there and stored into battery packs. So then from the battery packs, we could basically use the extra energy produced by the solar. Then if it wasn't only used for the desalination, it could also be used for other parts of the community. So right now, for a good size system to produce about an extra 2,500 liters a day, we were looking at somewhere around 50 solar panels, which actually isn't that much. It's not super costly to do that. So, for example, some of these hotels or communities or et cetera that are right on the beachfront, it's actually a viable solution for them to be able to start installing their own mini desalination plants, whereas in years past, it was these big, tremendous plants that were required. So, yeah, we have a template for it now that can be shared on the setup of these. They're also relatively cost efficient now. They used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and now I believe the latest price is somewhere around $8,000 per unit that can serve one large hotel or get the 2,500 liters of drinking water. So with all in all, with the solar and everything, now we're talking around $10,000 to $15,000, which is about 1/10 of what it used to cost some years ago. So I think that's the update on that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Karuna. That gave us a really good overview over freshwater solutions. I would love to move on towards your gray water solutions now.
Okay, great. The gray water solutions kind of ties in also to the black water and wastewater treatment. So I'll segue into the gray water while going into some of the black water treatment here also. See if I can share my screen again here. Okay, it says stop screen, so apparently it's still going. All right, so let's move into the gray water solutions here. Right now, again, the definition is anything that excludes black water. So the largest proportion of water, wastewater volume, is 50 to 80% in an average household or community, which means that basically flushing toilets is the main generator, 50 to 80% of water waste in a home. And this is from low-load sources, which is bathtubs, also includes showers, hand washing basins, and high-load sources like laundry in the kitchen. So, basically, this is the dual piping design here, and basically, wait, let me go to the slideshow here. Apologize for this. Okay, so this is the dual piping design, and basically, in order to get a gray water recycling system done, it's not really that complicated. It's definitely much easier to do when you're first setting up a community or a home or a system, because the standard home, the way it's plumbed right now, is that the black water from the toilet is connected to the showering system or the bathwater system. So you'll have those two connected, and they all go out into the wastewater treatment. Then obviously what you have is a lot of gray water that comes from this first image on the left. And then they all get intermingled in, and then they can't be recycled. They have to be treated as hazardous waste or treated some other way from a treatment plant. With gray water recycling, moving to the image on the right here, what happens is that the toilet flushes, and then from there, that is the arrow that goes straight down and into the wastewater sewer system. And then if it's, for example, a low flush toilet where it would have, basically like a urine in there, then that can also be retreated. It doesn't have to go into the black water system. So what you have basically is you have a gray water reuse system here. And what this is now, and you're at the shower, the bathtub on the right side, top right side, and you have the blue arrows going down here. As long as you're not using heavy chemicals in your shower and somewhat of an organic soap or shampoo, then you can rather easily go through this bin here. And what you see is the bin here. It can be used you can put a simple screen filter in there, as well as like an aerating, an oxygen, or even a carbon filter. And what it will do is it'll oxygenate the water, and then that goes into this orange arrow that goes up, and that goes back into the toilet. So just that one simple step of plumbing your shower system to a gray water reuse system and then back into the toilet, just that one step will save 50 to 80% of water for any household or community or village. And it's very rarely done. Matter of fact, it was illegal in the States up until some years ago, which didn't make any sense. But anyways, now it is actually suggested by most of the communities there. And so again, this step here of plumbing, and it can also be done for the kitchen, plumbing this into a gray water system, having to go back through the toilet, which means that fresh water does not continually have to go through your toilet system. Let me see here. Here's some quality requirements of gray water recycling, which is basically hygienic safety, not losing your comfort on that, environmental tolerance, and economic feasibility, which these are basically something saying that you don't have to give up anything really to gain 50 to 80% of water consumption. and also you're actually saving water, so it's actually feasible. Here's some technical considerations I'll go through rather quickly, but a pre-filtration sediment filter stage should use cleaning sleeves. This would be to remove things that could come through the shower, like, for example, or the bath, like hair, lint, sand, metal, plastics. If kitchen gray water is used, we would install a combined grease and sediment trap. Here's a space requirement per person. So, for example, 3 or 5 people, it tells you how many meters squared it should be. Depending on pollution load, water peak flows, and quality, you can find out how big the piping would need to be. One of the biggest things here would be to label your non-potable or drinkable pipes and your tapping points to distinguish from the drinking water. And then, as a general rule of thumb, there should be about 1,000 liters of storage per home for 3 minimum people. That's really a minimum. We usually recommend to go well above that. For 3 people, it would be like a 3,000 liter tank. And then lastly, a backflow prevention arrangement that hinders undesirable reversible flow, which basically means a backflush so that the sewer won't come back up through the system, which is why you get a lot of smells in certain places around Tulum, because they don't have this backflow preventer in there. So then things end up getting backed up through the piping system. Maintenance requirements. When there's high load gray water flows from the kitchen washing machines, the maintenance is expected a bit higher. In general, automatic and periodic cleaning, we usually say like once a week, once every other week would be good to check the pipes, but sometimes even like once a month is good. Some that you can even hook these up to internet monitoring systems and kind of like automize them for the flushing systems. And then after like a large rain or an event, you would usually go and see, okay, how is the system working? But they're relatively easy to set up and relatively easy to maintain. So here we can go into briefly some of the treatment technologies. These are basically, it can be either physical, chemical, or biological. Most use solid liquid separation as pre-treatment. The chemical treatments are really high energy and material consumption, a lot of waste. So for sustainable systems, we really don't recommend chemical treatments. Physical treatments are actually the most common, which are coarse sand filtration, soil filtration, membrane filtrations, or UV disinfection, and or biological enzymes. And biological treatments, we'll get into the Aquabella treatments later next, which talks about some of the wastewater treatment plants options rather. And then a combined physical and biological treatments is kind of the most common and recommended to really have an effective system. All right, so I think I'll pause there and pass it back over to Julia for any reflections or comments so far on the
Yeah, thank you so much, Karuna. That was excellent. Gave us a really good overview on the different filtration systems and techniques that are at hand to us. One of the systems that we really love using in communities that is natural are humidals that I would love to touch on. Humidals are natural filtration systems that naturally clean wastewater by filtering them through big rocks, smaller rocks, sands into different tanks where plants like banana plants, for example, eat the nitrogen out of the water, and going through all of these different stages and tanks essentially leaves the water clean. I'm a huge fan of it. It's totally holistic and it's 100% natural, and it perfectly connects to permaculture, to another important component of sustainable communities, the food aspect. Would you like to touch on that? And go.
All right, thank you for that. Yes, they're also one of my favorites, is the humidores. And let me get back up to that slide real quick here. Okay, here we go. So, as you mentioned, the wastewater treatment is really important. You have a number of options, including biodigesters and humidores. Here's one zoom out a little bit here. Okay. Here's one example of one that was kind of used to install. And what we're going to do is explain that here. The inlet would be where waste is coming in, for example. And then this is an example also of kind of what can be used as a biodigester or an underground tank here to create energy. So you have an inlet here. The inner treatment area is a mix of different kinds of rocks. And this image is one that's set up showing that it's kind of within a tank. But it can also be just layers of this out on the earth, which I've seen also like in Tepoztlan, for example. So it's coming in here. And then what it's doing is going through layers of these things. Here we have a settlement areas, which is like the tank settlement areas. And then you can see the two layers of kind of rocks on there. You can also put a certain kind of plants that are in there. And then in essence, we're slightly underground here. What happens is it goes through there. We have an air blower because we want to aerate some of these things so that you remove the smell and the things like this. So that's why the air diffuser. And then from here, what you can do is you can have an outlet, and then the outlet can go right to your compost. It can go right to your gardens. It's basically fertilizer grade. And from there, they can with this system, you can do a basic flush. The inlet would be from a toilet system going through this, aerated, and out the other ways. And these are kind of contained systems, but again, you can have it going through outdoor systems as well. Some of the feedback is the outdoor systems that could be a little bit more exposed to elements, animals, etc. So some people do prefer the enclosed kind of system, but both of them are very possible to do. So the biodigesters, we'll go back here. Oh, wait, okay, here we go. So the biodigesters and the humidales, one of the really good things about them also is that they're really relatively inexpensive to use, and they use all natural materials. So we just set one up here in an area on Kukulkan Road, and it was there. I put it as a con here that it can produce a smell, but also it can reduce. You can have any smell pollution reduced by doing it the right way, which are certain kind of plants and systems can really filter the waste well. We touched also on the biodigesters, which help produce gas and electricity, and then the humidales. They're also one of the things is that they are effective in residential areas. They do have an issue when you get into larger commercial areas, like whether it's there. We do know 1 or 2 hotels that are using the system, and they're using it relatively effectively, although they have to have the system set up away from where their guests are staying and stuff like that. A third or fourth one, which we always tell people, hey, don't forget about this option, which is basically dry toilets, which saves a lot of water. The cons can be smell, comfort, and hygiene. However, we've been working with one of the ones now, which is a great technology. People from Israel as well as California, and it's called Aquabella. And this is a natural enzyme. It's been used locally here in like the Sonora hotels, Cocoa Village, and different places. And it's basically an enzyme that eats up all the BODs and nitrates and etc. that cause smell. And it can also be used in cenotes, eat up algae and different things like that. And basically, what that is, you can use this in conjunction with a humidalis system or with a biodigester system, or you can use it straight into a septic tank. But the benefits of using something like this is that it's an all-natural bioenzyme, helps to prevent algal bloom and toxic leachate. Basically, with like about a week contact time, it can drastically reduce any bacteria that are in the water. So it also removes ammonia and nitrates, reduces the BOD as mentioned, reduces phosphate levels, breaks down organic sludge and solids, helps to get crystal clear water that could be even discharged directly into other waters or to the land. And it's been used in different situations like liquefying sludge, immature manure lagoons, even in hog farms, in crisis situations, and helps to avoid expensive excavation costs. So these are some of the ways right now that we can start to look at regenerating our wastewater systems, because it's such an important part of the ecosystem, especially when you look at places like Tulum where the landfills are full already and where there's no active or functioning wastewater treatment. These are options that can be used right away as point source solutions. So I think that covers what I have as a summary for the wastewater solution for the wastewater solutions at this stage.
So kindly. Yeah, I would love to move forward from water to energy if you're up for it. What do you have to share with us?
Great. So yes, in terms of energy, it's really important. Like we went to the Amazon forest last year, and we started installing these water systems, these water wells, and storage tanks and everything. And then we got down to the pumps, and we said, okay, how are we going to power this pump to get the water from point A to B to C? And really, the old paradigm of doing this was diesel um, generators and or electric power, but a lot of that power is not considered regenerative or clean energy. So right away, we realized it's really important to have energy systems that can interface with these water systems. And depending on what area you're in the world, you can see how many sunny days you have per year. For example, here in the Yucatan, we have something like 330 something sunny days of the year, which means that it's more than 90% of the time around there, it's sunny. Even if you have brief spouts of rain or gray or whatever. So basically, it's the ultimate renewable energy source because given that it's always going to be able to be renewed, what we do recommend is doing inverters and battery packs, for example, because then you could put a solar array, for example, onto any large housing or structure. You can even put them on like a platform on top of trees, for example, which we've seen. And then you can charge these battery packs, and they can be used for anything. They can be used for lighting homes. They can be used for lighting devices. Even we've done ones here in the jungle, even that are able to light people's, refrigerators and even like their air conditionings, for example. So basically, you can be 100% self-sustainable on solar, and there are considerations for it. You can see, like, for example, how many square meters, what your energy consumption would be, how many kilowatt hours you would need. But it's relatively straightforward calculation. And there's also a lot of ways to reduce the energy consumption, which is kind of like going back to the reduce, reuse, conserve. And by reducing consumption, we can do things like turning off things and unplugging things while we're not using them, as well as just kind of being creative with the power, using power responsibly. And then other options are things like wind and things like this. Here in the Yucatan doesn't lend itself so easily, although on the ocean, on the coast, it could be more feasible. There's a lot more wind. But there also have been done a lot of studies, for example, in places like California, where you have the corridor from San Diego up, where these wind sources have actually started to kill a lot of birds that were endangered. So for that reason, people have stopped going away as much for wind. Also because you have to drill large concrete bases in the earth in order to make them solid foundations enough. So there's some downsides of the wind that have been considered more lately. Other kinds of energy that people are looking at right now that are renewable include renewable battery packs as well. And some of these are like the Tesla kind of zero energy point batteries that can apparently be used and regenerated also without having to with going to charging stations as opposed to having to use another fuel source. And these are being implemented on smaller scales already. And so, but as someone who studied a lot into renewables and green energy, the technology of solar panels right now seems to be kind of heads and shoulders above some of the other options, just because it's relatively easy to install, design, use, and just because the sun is a completely renewable energy source that, by all estimates, still has millions of years of life in it still. So I encourage people that as they're building their community, building their village, building their home, to try and integrate these energy sources up front. That way, even during construction, for example, they don't have to use generators. They can already have a sample solar array. And again, these don't take up any space because you can relatively easily put them on your roof. You can put them in areas that don't take any spaces. There's even combined solar and rainwater systems available. And the solar panels have a new age of technology now. It was primarily photovoltaic cells, but now you have kind of the self-regenerating solar cells, which last about 2 or 3 times longer. So before, a solar panel system might last 5 to 10 years. Now they're being reported to last 20 to 30 years. So this is all kind of good news as regeneration moves forward. We're finding more solutions on how to integrate these systems and realizing how they're all interconnected with each other. So yeah, I think that's my brief on the importance of renewable energy.
Did you share the new link in agency?
Okay, I can hear you guys again now.
Can you share the link? StreamYard link? Ah, okay. Thank you. Okay, let's just put the... Oh, okay. We're back.
Hello, everyone. So I'm not sure where we left off on this, but yes.
You gave us a beautiful summary over the usages of solar and how valuable they are, also in comparison to other solutions like wind. I know one great concern about solar is on what to do with the panels after they're done. Can you share a few quick thoughts about this with us?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And yeah, as you mentioned, it is a great option. There have been quite a bit of discussion about, as we move forward in regenerative design, how else can we, take into regard the possible waste that comes up around that. Now, one of the good news is that the newer generations of the solar panels, they're built in now to be more 100% recyclable. However, there's still a lot of the old generation of solar panels that are out there that have been used. And for example, like even batteries, I guess they have to be, they have to be a special consideration for how you, account for the waste of batteries. So there's a different associations that are working on this now. They've opened a large solar panel recycling center in California right now. I honestly do not know of one in Mexico region right now, but that's a good note to follow up on. And what they're doing with the California recycling, because they started installing solar, whatever it was, 20 to 30 years ago there, they started separating parts of the solar panels that were recyclable from the parts that weren't. So some of the photovoltaic cells, some of the actual paneling material, I think they found out that about 70% of it was actually recyclable, and the other 30% of it or so had to be disposed of in other kind of ways, whether that be landfills or however they were going about that part. So it is a consideration. Usually, I think now that the old generation of solar panels are kind of being phased out And so as that's being done, the study that I read about the California facility is that their first and major step is separating parts of the system that can and cannot be recycled, which is also a very important point in places like here in the Riviera Maya, even for things like basic recycling, like the commingling is the biggest issue. So if you can recycle glass from plastic from other parts, then you can more accurately reflect and get the waste to the right places that it needs to be. So that's a good consideration here. I'm going to put on my extra homework here to start to research some places in Mexico, maybe close to here, that could be helpful as recycling centers, especially as it regards to solar panels.
Yeah, thank you for that. We will be excited to find out about these spaces. It is a topic that keeps coming up in our space as well, working with regenerative communities, of course. Thank you so much for summing this up for us. Water, solar, solar for energy, water for energy, wind for energy, free energy too. It's an upcoming topic that is worth researching. I think we might not be able to touch on this today, but it's quite exciting. So for everyone who's in the space, dig in there. There's really exciting solutions coming up around energy. What we would really like to touch on as well is waste management and food. And having already touched on water, we would love to move forward with waste. Do you have any thoughts to share in this Cosmos Corona?
Well, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to present here today. As we mentioned, that all these systems are definitely related and interconnected, the interconnected web of these things. And as we move towards fully functioning regenerative systems, I remember an elder, indigenous elder, told me one time that all we really need are the things like our shelters, having our water systems be renewable, our energy, and our food that we grow from, as well as love. They said those were the main contaminants. Those are the things you need to survive. So as we get there and we look at possible off-grid things, situations, I think it becomes increasingly important to have sovereignty over our food supplies, as well as what we can grow. There have been, plentiful discussions about some of the soil quality here in the Yucatan, and I've heard different things. From my understanding of it, though, it's still relatively easy through certain systems to set up food forests here. One of the most common ways can be to introduce raised beds, for example, have filtered water systems coming through these raised beds and/or rainwater sufficiency, and then introduce sustainable fruit trees, garden trees, whatever they need to be, whatever your preference is, as well as there's certain kind of greenhouse environments that are also very habitable here. And we tell people or suggest people to, if they have a land, to really study the water flow, where the water's flowing there. Look at it after it rains. Is it going to swales? Is it going straight into the ground? Is it pooling in certain areas? And there you can kind of see the elevations, the contours, where the water's flowing. And from there you can see the good points also to grow your crops, to grow your foods. And certain things will grow obviously more year-round. And then other things will grow more in hotter tropical climates, as well as other things in a little bit cooler climates. So, and that way you can do some research and see, for example, which fruits and vegetables would go really well in this climate. And from my understanding here, a lot of things will grow really well. And sometimes if it's very rocky soil surface, you can remove a layer of topsoil and introduce a more fertilized layer of soil and still keep the natural vegetation as much as possible. But a lot of different things, like this Mayan community we were visiting a few weeks ago, and Chemuyil and Valladolid, which I actually met through Tribalize, was they had their milpas, and they were growing a lot of things directly from the ground there, including tomatoes and oranges and limes. They had honey farms from the Melipona. They were growing zucchini, certain other kind of squashes, different kind of calabasas, as well as a couple other different kinds of fruits and vegetables and nuts. So it was an example for us saying that their soil was about the same here as they were closer to Valladolid, but still that with certain systems and a little bit of extra care they actually requested us that we install a rainwater catchment system there so that they could get some extra water to those crops. That through those extra little bit of steps, then you can actually create your own food sources. And with those food sources, then you can be self-sustainable in your own community and maybe exchange with other communities and villages certain things that you might be specializing in that they don't have. For example, for mine in Orlando, I know we want to grow extra greens like arugula and stuff like that because it can be kind of hard to find here in this region. So yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity to be experimental with the foods and also to use what's been done for thousands of years here, kind of with the traditional Mayan culture, and set up your own gardens that can be cared to, and really kind of closes the cycle of regenerative and self-sustaining communities here.
I could not agree more. You said it so beautifully, Karuna. Yeah, I think permaculture really teaches us that there is no waste. It is just a use resource, right? And once we understand that, we are able to funnel everything back into holistic and intelligent systems. We're able to funnel back the water that we're using to feed our plants. We're able to funnel back our own waste through dry toilets into nutrition for food. Organic waste is a very obvious example being used to create soil, especially here in the Yucatan, where we have a lot of limestone and can be tricky to grow food. We get to connect all of these different systems with each other and create intelligence that creates abundance at the end without having to waste anything that is inside the system. Which brings us to the topic of waste management. Are there any thoughts you would like to share on this?
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Let's see, for waste management, well, wastewater was part of waste management also as well. And then you have more like solid waste management. Yeah, I've been working with or in conjunction with local people like Katie from Makers and Woolies and Gracia. From what I understand and know is that composting is very important for waste management because when you're composting, you're separating, your organics and your things like your banana peels and your avocado peels and all that stuff from getting in with the rest of the, trash and or compostable items from commingled plastics and metals and stuff like that. So a waste management system is super important. It can be set up relatively easily, especially if you have a land where you can go and put a composting area there. If you're in town somewhere, you can take your compost to a couple of different places here in town, in Tulum at least. And as well as if you're somewhere with a jungle outlet, you can put this in a composting place and then also send it out to the forest or the jungle, which usually then it can be used by the natural soil to regenerate itself. So besides the composting, there's also ways to do other waste, solid waste disposal. And we usually try and advocate for on-point, on-site handling of that, which basically means just it's really important for families, households, villages, communities to reduce the overall amount of waste that they are producing, which means using things like reusable containers, reusable things that you don't have to go out and buy extra plastics for it. If you do have to buy them, and trying to get the harder kind of plastics that can be reused multiple times. So almost like a Burning Man type mentality, where it's like leave zero waste behind. That you can really, do that. But in cases where we do produce waste, that we have manageable systems in place. One of them is really just setting up the systems beforehand, so that people can say, okay, here's where I can take my glass products. Here's where I can put my plastics. Here's where I can put my compost, and then kind of have that be well defined and labeled. And then maybe if it's a community, I suggest usually doing guidelines where certain kinds of non recyclable materials are not even allowed in the community, like single use plastics. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the waste management system. It's very important. It's really good to do it beforehand, so that it's clear from the start, and it can be the most efficient system possible.
Thank you so much, Karuna. I would love to keep chatting with you for a long time about this, but I know you will have to run soon, or actually right now. So my deepest gratitude to you, to all the things you do for, being the water magician that you are, and for driving our generation. It's a pleasure, and I thank you kindly.
Thank you so much, Karuna, for finding time for us, and it's beautiful to get a high-level view and a holistic view on the topic of sustainability from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Julia. Thank you all for hosting me and having me. It's been a beautiful journey to be a part of the Regen community over the past year or two. I look forward to being of more service in the community, and always available for anyone else in the community that would like to follow up and get maybe some more specifics on how some of these systems are installed. And we do plan to, for example, install a couple rainwater catchment systems in the next month or two over the summer. So we'd be happy to maybe host something where we can do like a live demonstration of some of these systems being installed. Besides that, I want to give a big thank to the Regenerative Tulum Regen Alliance and community for hosting people like me and helping us to get a platform and voice, and for us all to move into the sustainable regenerative future that we're all calling in and working towards. So thank you so much again for hosting me, and you all have a beautiful weekend. I hope.
Alrighty, this was excellent, and we touched on really great topics with Karuna. I would like to touch on waste management a little more, and we've talked about organic waste and water waste and a little bit about solid waste. One of the amazing projects that we have connected with in this area is PatGas, and PatGas changes the game by allowing us to turn any kind of plastic into its original components of diesel, gasoline, kerosene, and paraffin, just through a little bit of temperature below 400 degrees Celsius and vibration. So any kind of plastic, if washed or unwashed, goes through different cylinders and is exposed to temperature and these different kind of vibration, which breaks it down into these like really high quality components, which are of much higher quality than you would receive at a petrol station, for example, because plastic itself has such high regulations, because a lot of the time it touches food, that it already serves the quality. One big issue around plastic is that the production of virgin plastic, new plastic, is a lot of the time cheaper than actually recycling plastic. And this is what PatGas is turning around for us, because the resale of different types of gasoline is obviously very lucrative. And this brings the shift in mindset that we as a humanity, as a collective, really need to see used resources as that instead of waste. We touched on this with the example of organic waste that allows us to turn it into soil, and we see it in all other areas of life, really, that allow us to simply reuse and reform resources. Is there anything you would like to add, Sonia?
I would like to agree very much with it. The regenerative mindset is about coming from linear, as we see as not really working that well for us, to circular. And as you mentioned before, one of the principles of permaculture is there is no actual waste. Everything that we use, we can reuse, or if we cannot reuse, if we can recycle. The organic waste that you mentioned, also plastic can be reused by changing it into clean energy, which is beautiful. We can also reuse it in bioconstruction
Right.
as
Eco-bricks?
eco-bricks, yes, which we saw in Adikumal, and it has a beautiful presence there. So there are many ways how we can do it, and with the help of beautiful people like Karuna, we can learn and grow from it, and definitely change the mindset to regenerative.
Yeah, eco-bricks have actually been a really important part of our journey of regeneration. As the new activists, our first vertical was the plastic challenge, and through this vertical, we connected with an eco-hotel village in the jungle of Akumal a year ago, because they were building with eco-bricks, plastic bottles that are filled very tightly with plastic waste and other non-recyclable, biodegradable waste that becomes really stern and really hard and can be used as bricks and filler material in construction. Because they used this, we connected with them and ended up partnering with them and turning the space into a regenerative community and holistic event space. Our first community co-creation, which allowed us to understand the importance of regenerative communities for both the ecosystem and humanity, and pushed us to move out and take this mission global, which we're doing right now with RegenTribe. So eco-bricks actually have a big place in my heart.
Julia loves them.
I love him. And going through this experience of regenerative community and the upcoming nitrogen and food crisis, we're constantly being reminded on how important it is to be autark. To not only be connected and live beautifully in community, but to make use of these sustainable solutions, because we literally need them for our survival. I don't want to be dramatic about it, but the upcoming and increasing shortage, especially when it comes to water and food, is really pushing us to come back to these old and new systems of agriculture and permaculture. And there's many things we can do. We cannot grow all the food that we are consuming, but we can, most of the time at least, but we can always partner with other communities, with other farms, and create, once again, intelligent, holistic systems around that. We can use the food that we are growing and turn it into a farm-to-table restaurant, for example, maybe in collaboration with other farms around us. And through that, bring in visitors and tourists and inspire them for this kind of lifestyle, inspire them for the regenerative mindset and for community life as well. Most of us won't move from our London apartment into a regenerative community. This question just doesn't arise, so there's too many question marks around it. But we might visit this delicious farm-to-table restaurant, or this awesome event, or this beautiful Airbnb at a regenerative community next time we're in Mexico or in Costa Rica or wherever we are in the world. So these kind of systems and networks allow us to not only live regeneratively and not only generate income, but also inspire others and really move this regenerative mindset forward and spread it into the world. Aha, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much for being here today and chatting with us about sustainable solutions.
Yes, next week we will have 3 awesome speakers from topic of human elements, so a very crucial one when it comes to community. When we think about community, not only the physical but in general, it's the main vertical. So we will touch on many different topics. We will share a beautiful conversation with Chelsea, with Lee, and with Emanuela next week. So tune in or come here to this beautiful place in the jungle and enjoy.
Thank you.